If you were to walk into any of these buildings, you would be greeted by moving hymns, uplifting songs, and a strong sense of community. The music and expressions that emerged from these congregations flowed into American popular culture. They supported members in their search for employment, housing, and food. Many served as gathering places for political activities and centers of service to the neighborhood, regardless of their size. There is no Black-run church currently in operation in Cleveland, Ohio, as historical as St. John's African Methodist Episcopal Church, located on East 40th Street. Established in 1830, the church was founded by 6 formerly enslaved individuals under the guidance of Father William Paul Quinn, an AME pastor and missionary from New Jersey. In its early days, the congregation gathered in members' homes. As the church grew, it purchased land at East 40th and Central Avenue in 1917 and hired the architectural firm Badgley and Nicholas to design its new building at a cost of $55,000. Today, St. John's AME Church remains at 2261 East 40th Street. Shiloh Baptist Church, Cleveland's second oldest Black congregation, was founded in 1850. It was established by a group of recent Southern migrants who had worshipped at the First Baptist Church of Cleveland. As the number of Black worshipers grew, white members of First Baptist Church became uneasy and sought to limit further Black membership. This proposal faced opposition from some members, including John Malvin, a prominent leader in Cleveland's Black community. The objections of some members led to a compromise that allowed for the creation of a separate Black Baptist mission church. In August 1850, the mission gained official recognition as Shiloh Baptist Church. The formation of Shiloh set a precedent for the Black church in Cleveland, which often emerged in response to exclusion, growing Black populations, or the need for institutions that catered to the unique economic, social, political, and spiritual needs of Black migrants. By the dawn of the 20th century, Cleveland had 2 prominent Black congregations. Yet the city was on the cusp of one of the largest and most significant migration patterns in American history. Before 1890, more than 90% of Black Americans lived in the South, most in rural communities. But in the decades that followed, everything began to change. With the rise of Jim Crow laws, economic hardship, and racial violence, thousands of Black Southerners sought new opportunities elsewhere. World War I accelerated this movement as industries in northern and midwestern cities needed labor. Cleveland was one of those cities, offering jobs, the hope of better living conditions, and a chance to escape the terror of the South. Many migrants arriving in Cleveland came from Alabama. For them, the church was more than a place of worship. It was a lifeline. It provided social support, helped newcomers adjust, and became a center for activism. One of the most influential churches was St. John's AME. Here, women led discussions on budgeting and smart spending, while men held sessions on financial planning and personal conduct. The church also became a hub for national leaders, hosting figures like Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Marian Anderson, who gave her first Cleveland concert within its walls in 1919. By 1910, Cleveland had just 14 churches serving its 8,500 Black residents. But as the Black population grew, so did the churches. Middle-class newcomers gravitated toward congregations like St. James, Shiloh, St. Andrew's Episcopal, and Antioch Baptist. These churches, often led by educated pastors, became symbols of stability and prestige. But not everyone worshiped the same way. Southern migrants brought a more expressive style of worship, emotional, rhythmic, and filled with movement. Northern Black churchgoers, influenced by middle-class ideals, saw this as regional backwardness. But instead of conforming, migrants formed their own churches. Places like Second Emmanuel, Mount Carmel Baptist, and New Light Baptist, where they could worship freely. One church that emerged from this divide was Olivet Baptist Church. It began in the 1930s with just 40 members, but soon grew into one of Cleveland's largest Black congregations. Beyond worship, churches became engines of activism. Antioch Baptist Church, founded in 1893, played a major role under Reverend Dr. Horace C. Bailey. It expanded, erased its debt, and became a center for interracial cooperation and civil rights organizing. Bailey was more than a preacher. He was a leader in the Cleveland NAACP, worked with the Independent Voters League, and fought for political representation. The Black church was never just a house of worship. It was a community center, a political force, a school, and a sanctuary. During the Civil Rights era, Antioch remained a center of activism under the leadership of ministers like Wade Hampton McKinney. McKinney, who became pastor in 1928, was renowned for his charismatic speaking and leadership. He was the first Black foreman of the Cuyahoga County Grand Jury and played a key role in establishing important initiatives like the Quincy Savings and Loan Company and Forest City Hospital. In 1935, McKinney also helped establish the Future Outlook League with John O. Hawley. The FOL campaigned for better employment opportunities for African Americans by pressuring white-owned businesses in Black neighborhoods to hire Black workers. Cleveland's Black population grew dramatically during the Second Great Migration, skyrocketing from about 148,000 in 1950 to nearly 280,000 by 1965. By then, over half of the city's public school students were Black, and 99% of Cleveland's Black residents lived on the East Side, largely a result of decades of redlining and racist housing policies. These discriminatory practices also shaped Cleveland's Jewish community, confining them to neighboring areas until after World War II. As Jewish families gained upward mobility and moved into the suburbs, many Black families followed in their footsteps, purchasing homes and churches previously owned by Jewish residents. But for many, life in Cleveland remained a struggle. Labor unions often excluded Black workers or created barriers to entry, leaving the majority in low-paying, menial jobs. Overcrowded housing conditions worsened as slumlords divided single-family homes into cramped multifamily units. Neighborhoods like Hough and Glenville faced neglect, urban blight, and deteriorating infrastructure. Schools were overcrowded, sanitation declined, and white-owned businesses took advantage of Black residents by charging inflated prices for goods. In the face of these challenges, Black churches became beacons of hope and resilience. They didn't just provide spiritual guidance, they were vital community centers that adapted to meet the needs of a growing population. One of the most notable examples is Corey United Methodist Church. In 1945, the church purchased the Cleveland Jewish Center in Glenville for $135,000. After extensive renovations, Corey moved to its new home in 1947. By the 1950s, Corey had grown into Cleveland's largest Black church, with over 3,000 members. East Mount Zion Baptist Church acquired its present-day property from the Euclid Avenue Christian Church in 1955 and became the first Black congregation on Euclid Avenue. It had over 1,500 attendees and paid off its mortgage in 3 years. Liberty Hill Baptist Church followed a similar path. Founded in 1918, the church relocated in 1956 to the historic Euclid Avenue Temple, which had been a landmark for Cleveland's Jewish community. Under Dr. Milton E. Wilson's leadership, the church's move was hailed as a milestone, marking one of the few Black-owned properties on Euclid Avenue at the time. The transition was also marked by a symbolic moment of unity. During the final service at Euclid Avenue Temple, Rabbi Brickner expressed his hopes for Liberty Hill's success and reaffirmed his commitment to desegregation. Black churches didn't just adapt, they led. During the Civil Rights Movement, they became rallying points for activism and social change. Corey United Methodist Church, for example, hosted icons like Malcolm X, who gave the first iteration of his famous ballot or the bullet speech there, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who drew a crowd of 5,000 in 1963. Corey was also a breeding ground for local leadership. Reverend Sumter Riley, Corey's pastor, spearheaded the United Freedom Movement, an interracial coalition that fought to integrate Cleveland's schools. The Greater Abyssinia Baptist Church next door served as the UFM's headquarters, and together, the two churches organized key events for the movement. The Black church has always been a cornerstone of African American life, a sanctuary for faith, education, and activism. In Cleveland, this legacy is deeply tied to the city's civil rights history. One such congregation is Olivet Institutional Baptist Church. Reverend Odie M. Hoover arrived in Cleveland in 1952, following an impressive revival at Greater Abyssinia Baptist Church. His preaching captured the attention of local pastors, and soon after he became the leader of Second Olivet Baptist Church, later renamed Olivet Institutional Baptist Church. Under Hoover's leadership, the church paid off its mortgage within 7 years, relocated to a larger space, and flourished in membership. Hoover wasn't just a pastor. He was a civil rights leader with close ties to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whom he supported both locally and nationally. Olivet became King's headquarters in Cleveland, hosting Southern Christian Leadership Conference operations whenever King visited. Hoover even accompanied King to Oslo in 1964 when King accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. Hoover's activism wasn't limited to hosting famous leaders. During the 1968-69 student protests at John Hay High School, Hoover wrote a public letter calling for unity, acknowledging both the legitimate grievances of the students and the need for the community to address these issues collectively. After Hoover's passing in 1973, Reverend Otis Moss Jr. took the helm. A Morehouse College graduate and veteran of the civil rights movement, Moss had deep ties to Dr. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Once in Cleveland, Moss founded the Olivet Housing and Community Development Corporation to revitalize the Fairfax neighborhood. Another key figure was Reverend Dr. E. Theophilus Cavanis of Greater Abyssinia Baptist Church. Born in Texas, Cavanis brought a deep civil rights consciousness to Cleveland in 1961. Like Hoover, Cavanis was a trusted ally of Dr. King and played a pivotal role in Cleveland's civil rights movement. Greater Abyssinia served as the headquarters for the United Freedom Movement. Cavanis also lent his support to Carl Stokes' historic mayoral campaign, becoming the first black chair of Cleveland's zoning board after Stokes' election. But Cavanis's influence extended far beyond Cleveland. He was deeply involved in the National Baptist Convention USA, the Ohio Baptist General Convention, and many other organizations. Over his career, he left an indelible mark, blending faith and activism to fight for justice. From hosting civil rights leaders to tackling local issues like housing and education, Cleveland's black churches and the leaders within them transformed faith into action. Their legacies remind us that churches are not just places of worship, but engines of change in the pursuit of equality. One of the defining challenges of this period was racial integration, an issue that many Cleveland churches navigated with varying degrees of success. While many black congregants formed their own institutions, Calvary Presbyterian Church stood out as an exception by actively welcoming its newly arrived black members. Located at East 79th Street and Euclid Avenue, Calvary was dedicated in 1890 and designed by Charles F. Schweinfurth, the architect behind many opulent homes on Cleveland's Millionaires Row. Originally serving the city's white elite, who attended services in formal attire and generously supported philanthropic endeavors, the church faced a pivotal decision as Cleveland's affluent population began migrating to suburban areas like the Heights. Rather than relocating, Calvary Presbyterian chose to remain in its original neighborhood, which by the post-World War II era had transitioned from Eastern European to predominantly black. The church embraced the changing demographics and committed to engaging with its neighbors. It launched initiatives to improve the community, such as cleaning homes and streets, addressing vermin infestations, and shutting down bars, all aimed at fostering pride and a positive image of the area. These efforts resonated with local residents, who increasingly joined the congregation. Calvary transformed into a vital hub not only for worship but also for meaningful social outreach. Black-owned churches in Cleveland played a pivotal role in the city's civil rights movement, often standing at the forefront of significant events like the Hough Uprising. The unrest began on July 18, 1966, reportedly sparked by a confrontation between a black customer and a bar owner, followed by the display of an inflammatory sign outside the establishment. Over the next 2 days, firebombing, looting, and arson targeted businesses. Investigations into the causes of the Hough Uprising revealed deep divisions. the official grand jury, led by former Cleveland Press editor Louis Seltzer, attributed the unrest to communist agitators, an explanation that many rejected as dismissive. In response, a citizens' grand jury conducted independent inquiry. Their findings pointed to systemic issues: appalling living conditions, government neglect, and rampant police abuse and disrespect for the Black community. In the wake of the uprising, Liberty Hill Baptist Church emerged as a key player in addressing the community's grievances. Just 1 month after the riots, the church hosted a series of hearings that drew 500 attendees, offering a platform for voices critical of the official narrative. Churches also became critical sites for political mobilization during this era. In 1963, Antioch Baptist Church hosted a mass meeting to launch an NAACP membership drive, featuring civil rights leaders such as Reverend Ralph Abernathy and Reverend V. Kelly M. Smith, both of whom had worked together in the Southern Civil Rights Movement. Liberty Hill Baptist Church similarly hosted a rally for the Congress of Racial Equality in 1966. Another pivotal moment in Cleveland's history was the election of Carl Stokes as the first Black mayor of a major American city. A Cleveland native, Stokes had long-standing ties to the city's churches. His parents were married by Reverend S.M. Robertson, pastor of Liberty Hill Baptist. Before the election, Stokes held a rally at Shiloh Baptist Church, and Reverend E.T. Cavanis of Greater Abyssinia played a key role in mobilizing clergy support for his campaign. Cavanis helped organize voter drives in the fall of 1967, and he viewed Stokes' election as a critical step in empowering Black communities to take leadership roles in cities where Black populations had surged during the Great Migrations. The buildings occupied by various Black congregations in Cleveland showcase unique designs from different eras. Some of these churches relied on Black-owned architectural firms, most notably R.P. Madison International in Whitley and Whitley, Inc. In 1954, Robert P. Madison became the first registered African-American architect in the state of Ohio. It was difficult to find work in the early years of practice. One of the places where Madison did find work was in Cleveland's Black church community, specifically the AME churches. In 1956, Madison was hired by Emmanuel Baptist Church, who had been rebuilding their edifice after a fire completely destroyed their church in 1939. From 1940 to 1949, Emmanuel Baptist worked with African American contractors to erect a new sanctuary. Robert Madison later went on to design Quinn Chapel AME Church in 1965. R.P. Madison International continued to work with AME churches, constructing Lee Memorial AME in the early 2000s. Nationally, religious institutions are grappling with shrinking memberships, as increasing numbers of Americans identify with no religious affiliation. According to The Great Dechurching by Jim Davis and Michael Graham, this shift reflects a cultural prioritization of professional and financial success over community involvement. While church attendance may seem disconnected from those goals, it correlates with better health outcomes, longer lifespans, increased generosity, and more stable families. Cleveland's Black churches continue to embody resilience, even amid the city's population decline and broader societal shifts. From their inception, these institutions have offered refuge from the indignities of racism, fostering dignity, community, and activism. Beyond addressing spiritual needs, they have served as hubs for political organizing and economic support. While challenges persist, Cleveland's Black churches remain steadfast in their mission, preserving their historical and cultural significance while evolving to meet the needs of their congregations and communities.